You know, I'm going to give you a history lesson.
We got some dumbass motherfuckers floating around this country.
Stop laughing! And when I do, start fucking.
Also, y'all did some nasty ass jokes on my ass too.
Funny jokes and unfunny jokes come out of the same birth.
You fucking guys are unbelievable.
Why are you laughing?
Evening, everybody. Welcome to Why Are You Laughing, a history of comedy podcast. And today, I am pleased to introduce to you Charlie Sheen, the Tiger Blood saga. The CBS and 2.5 Men took on Charlie Sheen, and they had no idea the machine, the buzzsaw that they were running into. It was honestly a wild time and the start of a lot of like online social media type drama. I feel like the Tiger Blood stuff that we'll get into today, like Mel Gibson, Michael Richards, was all kind of an era that was in a 4 or 5 year window where YouTube was really getting cooking. So we will get into all of that today. And you forget that like 2.5 Men is probably one of the most successful sitcoms of the 2000s. So, well, that if you're wondering, that's how it fits into comedy. But
it would be on an all-time list, probably.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into all of it. But first, I do want to remind you guys, thank you for supporting the program thus far. But if you want to go above and beyond, then you can join the Patreon or just support the show for free on Apple, Spotify, YouTube by leaving 5-star reviews, subscribing, liking and tapping the notification bell on YouTube, even though apparently we're demonetized, so nothing matters. It's chaos out there, but support the show. That's why you go to the Patreon, folks, because we're too hot for YouTube. And you get bonus episodes on there. The Opie and Jim episode, or Opie versus Jim episode, is up there now. People seem to be enjoying that. That's our longest episode ever, 2 hours. We hit on that one. And by the way, we'll touch on it on the Blind Mike project later this week. 2 hours doesn't cover anywhere near all of it because these guys are still bickering after all these years. So that bonus episode exclusive on Patreon. And we'll also be doing a mini episode about Norm on The View. And if you want these episodes a week early as well, then make sure you join the Patreon. Appreciate it. It seems like a lot of new people on there, and they're enjoying Why You Laughing. So if you want to become one of them, do that if you wouldn't mind. Blindmike.net is where you can find all that stuff. It's weird because, Craig, you just said 2.5 Men might be on some all-time lists of sitcoms, at least as far as success. And it's like, I don't think of it that way because it was a very standard sitcom. It didn't change anything, didn't revolutionize anything. It was stuff we've seen before with jokes we've heard before, but it was massively successful. And maybe it was exactly that. Like people just liked something they could turn their brain off, hear dumb sex jokes, or, hey, Charlie's an alcoholic. We could laugh at that. Because I do think the era of Sopranos, Mad Men, Breaking Bad, I think a lot of that has caused us to scrutinize the sitcom too harshly. And so now we're like, oh, well, people, that would never happen. Right. It's like, yeah, but sometimes you can just laugh at a dumb thing happening,
Yeah, like I liked 2.5 Men, like when I was on, but I never like seeked it out. If it was on the television, I would watch it and then not hate it.
It's classic Craig comedy. It fits right into the Craig, Dane Cook, Chris D'Elia 2.5 Men. Those are his big three, he calls them.
The last one there was a bit of...
Well, so Charlie Sheen obviously kind of made I don't know if you could really call it a comeback. I don't know how down he was, but I know, he's had some legal and drug issues throughout his entire career. So he does, Platoon and Major League and Wall Street, all these very successful movies. And then in the 90s, he was kind of down for a bit, but then made a comeback with Spin City when Michael J. Fox left. And then CBS has the idea of bringing these two kind of 80s stars together to play brothers. John Cryer and Charlie Sheen. And essentially, Charlie is playing himself. His name is Charlie. He's a very wealthy guy who has nothing but time on his hands to, booze and fuck, essentially, is his role. So it wasn't too much of a departure from his real life. And it was super successful early on. Throughout its whole run, it was pretty successful. That's the weird thing about sitcoms now is like legitimately something could be the most successful thing on television and you'll know no one that watches it.
Oh yeah. Like Big Bang Theory.
Big Bang Theory had 20 million viewers at a time. And, no one I know was watching. It's very strange how sitcoms worked out.
Well, no one my age watched. Like my parents watched that.
That's true. And I think that's probably true of 2.5 Men as well, where they were at a time where everyone was still watching network TV, at least when they started. But as time went on, I think it kind of phased towards older people and people in the Midwest and, people who just wanted to fucking watch Charlie Sheen make some dick jokes for a half an hour.
Right.
So everything was going great. And Charlie Sheen was the highest paid actor on television. He was making $1.25 million an episode. And let's not forget those seasons are generally about 24 episodes. Yep. So the guy was raking in some serious money. And for the first few seasons of the show, by all accounts, he was sober, I guess. I don't know how true that is, but that's what everyone says, is that he was sober at the beginning of the show. And they do say you could kind of tell by his mood. Like, he was very with it. He was chatty on set and he would be friendly. And then there was kind of a stark change at a certain point. Because right around the same time that the show debuted, he got married to Denise Richards.
Babe.
They had a couple of kids together. And then we get to our topic today, the beginning of the demise.
In the court documents, it was alleged that Denise accused Charlie of prescription medication abuse, violent mood swings, compulsive gambling, and the use of pornography. Charlie attempted to brush the claims off as baseless and vile. During a bitter custody dispute later that year, she claimed that he had physically and verbally abused and threatened to kill her. Denise felt like she had no choice but to get a restraining order against him. By 2006, Denise and Charlie continued with divorce proceedings, and the papers were signed. The couple was officially divorced.
So, by all accounts, this is kind of the start of Charlie's. And people say it's because he got divorced that he went back to booze and drugs. It could also be that he started using again, and that's why he and Denise Richards started having problems. Who knows? But it got extremely ugly. It was very ugly in the press. And this lasted for a long time, by the way. They would, kind of this is after our story ends. They kind of reconciled and they would go on vacations together. And then after that, there are voicemails where he's calling his daughter a little pig whore, which I thought was only Alec Baldwin. I thought he had that trademarked, but apparently it was a common thing back then that you leave a voicemail and call your daughter a whore. That's what big time actors did. But yeah, this got extremely ugly, and it all played out in the press, and there were a lot of back and forth. The one interesting allegation I hear in that is drug use, he was abusive, and also he watched pornography.
God
How'd that get in there?
He watched porn.
It's a very strange allegation to throw in there, but I'm sure there's some kind of context.
Well, if he's doing it in the living room while his kids are home.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is there's got to be some kind of content. It's just a funny throwaway, and can you believe he's cranking it, this guy?
Can you believe he does what every guy does?
After all that. Yeah, so the demise kind of starts right there. People noticed a drastic difference on set. He was, he would be, I was about to say he would be late, but here's the great dispute is that, the network kind of got tired of dealing with him. And that's one of the things they would throw out is that he would, miss rehearsal. He would show up late for recordings. And Charlie was saying, no, I was always there. I was there. I was there when I needed to be. Who cares what I'm doing offset? But as we're about to play, there is some reason for the network to care what he's doing offset when it comes to legal issues. I believe this is about 2008. He's married to now Brooke Mueller. The divorce is finalized with Denise Richards, and he is now remarried to another woman. And this is on Christmas morning, I believe this took place, of 2008.
Charlie Sheen spent the better part of Christmas Day in a Colorado jail cell. Here's his mugshot. Authorities say the 44-year-old was arrested on domestic violence allegations after officers responded to a 911 call from a house he's believed to be staying at. An ambulance did go to the Aspen house, but the accuser was not taken to the hospital. Authorities are not identifying the person. Sheen is married. He married a real estate investor in May 2008. The couple have twin boys born in March. Sheen's lawyer has cautioned against any rush to judgment, saying he believes it's much ado about nothing.
Yeah, nothing to see here, folks. No big deal. Don't worry about it.
You guys remember my brother Emilio?
So the story apparently is that he and Brooke, who was the one who called, but he and Brooke started drinking real early Christmas morning. I assume the kids were not there. Because they got real toasted, and it came to some sort of blows apparently. And there's a lot of there's a lot of ugliness to Charlie Sheen. We'll see what the cast of 2.5 Men saw. A lot of different sides to him as we play some clips throughout the episode. And that's what we're not going to do a feel good episode about drug addiction, but that's what drugs do to you. So there is partially that to blame. But a mini episode I've been thinking about doing on Patreon is Donald Glover's special Weirdo, the one comedy special that he did for Comedy Central.
Yep.
And he has a bit in there where he says the one white guy that's allowed to say the N-word is Charlie Sheen. Because there was some recording of him like calling Denise Richards the N-word. And Donald Glover was like, I like that. A guy that just like can't get his seatbelt in right and he shouts the N-word.
I do remember that.
So he was going through some dark times. So then we cut to season 8 of 2.5 Men. Which I mean most sitcoms in syndication don't even make it that long. So we're talking season 8, this starts to flame out. And that's well into the run of 2.5 Men.
Season 8, 24 episodes a season, 1.25 million per.
Whew. I mean, that's what, $28 million or something like that? So
a season.
Making $28 million a year. And they're technically on top of the world, I think, as far as creative. What's the word I'm looking for? Creative satisfaction of some kind. I can imagine it getting a little monotonous, but they're nominated for Emmys every year, and they're number one sitcom on CBS. So life is pretty good. And Charlie was enjoying his life. He was taking that money and really having some fun with it. So now we start to get into kind of his demise, right?
Yeah, this was bipolar.
Yeah, so this is him talking about whether or not he is bipolar, I think.
Your anger and your hate, I think, is coming off as erratic to people.
My passion. It's all
okay,
passion.
Your passion
yes.
is coming off as erratic
right.
to people.
Well, you borrow my brain for 5 seconds and just be like, dude, can't handle it. Unplug this bastard. Yeah, because it fires in a way that is, I don't know, maybe not from this particular terrestrial realm.
I think some of those things that you're putting out there are making people think something's wrong with you.
That has nothing to do with me, really. I mean, they're entitled to, I suppose, interpret stuff as they must.
Some
are a doctor of.
Some are saying that you're bipolar.
Wow, what does that mean?
I guess that you're on 2 ends of the spectrum.
Wow, and then what? What's the cure? Medicine? Make me like them? Not gonna happen. I'm by winning. I win here and I win there. Now what? If I'm bipolar, aren't there moments where a guy like crashes and it's like in the corner, like, oh my God, it's all my mom's fault? Shut up. Shut up. Stop. Move forward.
I've dealt with a few drug addicts in my day, and I love when they're giving examples. Like, wouldn't I be doing this? And it's like, oh, we're watching you do it, Charlie. He's like, wouldn't I be going through manic episodes?
I just like that. Wouldn't it be my mom's fault?
Oh, boo-hoo. Yeah, so this, I mean, we're getting into some pretty famous clips here. Like, winning was a phrase that, lasted long enough to become exhausting. It was one of those that really stuck around. And then when you heard someone saying it, oh, this is a cornball that just found something from 3 years ago.
It went from cool to hack so quick.
Yeah, very quick, because this was one of the most popular things. And this was going viral when viral meant like literally everyone.
Right.
Like now something can go viral. That means it has a few 100,000 views. It could easily be missed. But this is at a time, 2011 or 2010 is a time where we're still kind of all paying attention to the same stuff. The internet is there, obviously. There's a bunch of different outlets. But, we're still all pretty much watching TV. Streaming services hadn't taken off. Certainly not the way they are now. So we're all kind of focused on the same stuff. So everyone is watching this Charlie Sheen meltdown. And not only was it being broadcast on every radio station and being talked about on every talk radio station, but he was essentially calling every talk radio station. So, I know he called into like Alex Jones and all these shows. I didn't remember this. So I hadn't moved to Boston. I was in college when this happened, and I had not moved out to Boston yet. I didn't realize a big morning show out here, Toucher and Rich, was one of the shows he called. And then Craig was telling me before the show, this I really didn't know. I guess he called them at like 1:30 in the morning, and they just went to the studio and broadcast for like 3 or 4 hours.
For hours. He was in there just ripping butts and just brain dumping all night.
Just in the middle of the night?
Yeah.
Was he physically there, or he called in?
He was physically there.
Yeah, I didn't know that, and I didn't know that show, so I didn't know them as even if you said Toucher and Rich, I wouldn't have known who they were at the time. But yeah, he was doing shit like that. He was just on this bizarre manic tirade. And this, by the way, is I should have set it up a little better. It is after Chuck Lorre, who is, say what you want about him, a giant in the television world.
Yep.
Has his hand in some of the biggest sitcoms ever. Like, this guy has to be worth an astronomical amount of money.
Stand by.
Because he has a piece of some massive sitcoms, and he knows, again, creatively you can do some trashing.
Oh my God. Yes.
Give me a number.
Yes.
300 million.
Double that.
$600 million.
Yes.
And and it's more than that, because he always has residuals coming in constantly. Like anything on CBS in the last 20 years essentially has been him. So he's a monstrous success. And what I was about to say was, creatively you can trash the guy and say he does some pretty hollow stuff, but he knows how to make a sitcom that will appeal to people that are watching a sitcom at 8 p.m. on CBS.
Right.
The guy knows his audience and has certainly catered to it. So anyways, he sees some of the stuff with Charlie Sheen, and the way I remember it, because, I was in college at the time. So I remember thinking this way, where I was like, fuck the man, Charlie, do what you want to do. If you're showing up when you need to be there, party on, Chuck. You're the man. And then I go back and I hear, how he was kind of treating the cast and crew, the domestic violence charges, all this sort of stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, that does seem like a headache, where all CBS did. It's funny because I had such a different memory of this. I thought of CBS as the bad guys, the corporate suits. And then when you look at it, all they really did was say, hey, Charlie, we're putting the show on hiatus until you get yourself better. And we are mandating that you go to rehab. We're forcing you to go to rehab. And that was Charlie's big gripe, essentially. And so when you kind of look at it that way, you're like, what the fuck, dude? They're paying you over $1 million a year, or over $1 million an episode, rather. Over $20 million a year. You couldn't just go to rehab? You know,
just go for like 3 months.
Now, in Charlie's eyes, he's like, hey, rehab doesn't work. Why would I keep going? I'm just going to do drugs when I get out. You know?
Yeah.
So I get Charlie not wanting to do it. And like I said, I do get the element of like, hey, if you're showing up on time, keep cashing those checks. But if you're becoming exhausting to deal with and you're literally getting in legal troubles, then yeah, I can understand why CBS didn't want to deal with that.
Yeah. Do you know what Charlie Sheen's current net worth is at?
I'll say 85 million.
I wish, dude. He's at 10 million.
No.
He went through some real problems with gambling.
Charlie.
Yeah.
That's less than half a season of
I know.
2.5 Men.
I know. That's fucking crazy.
Can't be.
That's crazy.
Oh, man. Well, I'm amazed he didn't make money off of all the T-shirt slogans that he created during this time, because we've got a few more classic clips from this era. This really was, as from a branding perspective, Charlie Sheen was printing T-shirts every single day because he was doing all these interviews in this, manic. He's saying he's sober, which is, if you ever listen to Artie Lang, it's an interesting insight into the psyche of a drug addict.
Yeah.
And this is true. Like I've had, friends do this as well. But Artie Lang will say, there's a lot of times where I'm talking about how glad I am that I'm sober and how idiotic I was when I was on drugs. And while I'm telling that story, I'm on heroin.
Well, all you have to do is watch him in the clip we just played, the one we're about to play. Watch him and just keep that in mind when we play the last clip.
Good. Yeah, good point. Good point. Yeah, look at just the difference in his voice and everything.
The way he even looks.
Yeah. But what's the next clip?
This is Tiger Blood.
Yeah, this is the big one. Again, if you thought winning was bad, people referencing this clip got even more exhausting.
When was the last time you used?
I use a blender. I use a vacuum cleaner. I use household items. When was the last time I ingested or took drugs?
It annoys me that at the time it was viewed like he was on this rock star rampage, and then you look back and it's like he's just being a nudge, an annoying. Oh well, I use vacuums. It's like, all right, Charlie,
he's just a junkie.
Come on, answer my question. You know what I mean?
Household items. When was the last time I ingested or took drugs?
Yes. When was the last time you took drugs?
Such an AA stupid expression or term. I don't remember. I do not remember.
A week ago, 2 weeks ago,
maybe a month
2 days ago.
6 weeks. I don't know. It was a couple days before the suits rolled in and said, change everything. We're shutting you down.
Tell me about the last time you took drugs.
The last time I took drugs, I probably took more than anybody could survive.
What are we talking about? How much?
I don't know, man. I was banging 7-gram rocks and finishing them because that's how I roll. I have one speed. I have one gear. Go.
How do you survive that?
Because I'm me. Because I'm me. I'm different. I just have a different constitution. I have a different brain. I have a different heart. I have a different, I get tiger blood, man.
You don't worry that you're going to die when you take that many drugs?
Dying's for fools.
He's talking in a lot of great slogans, that's for sure. But yeah, Tiger Blood became kind of his catchphrase throughout this thing that he literally turned into a tour, which we'll get to.
Yep.
But yeah, he's really going off the rails here, and that's a thing where, it's a thing that drug addicts do. Like you hear him there deflecting, and then admitting they used to do drugs and be like, oh, I was doing crazy amounts of drugs, which is, it's standard of a junkie, but it's also kind of brilliant in a way because it disarms you. You're like, oh, well, he's telling the truth about that. I'm going to have to believe whatever he says next.
I would have been like, you're not blatantly on cocaine right now.
Yeah, boy, this doesn't look like the guy that was in Platoon. You seem a little off, Chuck.
I saw Hot Shots. This isn't the same guy.
Yeah, so, that's the other thing about Charlie, too, is he has such a diverse... He was in a lot of great comedies and drama. Like, he truly is a great actor.
Yeah.
which is why it's weird that he was on this generic show. But I think it speaks to the credit of a great actor, because a great actor like Charlie Sheen can make a fairly generic script.
Well, let me ask you this:
into a hit show.
Did the show work with Ashton Kutcher?
That's exactly my point, Craig. Now you could also argue, 12 seasons in, when the plot has completely been derailed.
True.
It wasn't necessarily set up for success either. But
yeah, I just remember watching it like, this is not even passable. Like, it was terrible.
Yeah. I didn't watch much. I just watched the first episode to see what they did with it, and
they killed him.
Just the plot didn't make much sense. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. We're still right in the thick of it, right in the thick of Charlie's demise here.
I think this is his message to Chuck Lorre.
Yeah, this picks up kind of in the middle of his message, but he has a message for Chuck Lorre and the powers that be at CBS.
Rotting dog shit. The fermented puke that is your viscera. Can you smell the lies? Can you smell the carnage you've created? Can you smell the imposter living within? Can you smell the whimpering, scared child you'll never have the courage to embrace? Can you smell your mother's tears from some distant memory as she stared at her pathetic creation, asking all around her why this feeble abortion survived? Can you smell it, Chuck? It smells like malaria, in case you were wondering. If sad and stupid had a foul odor attached, it would be you, fuck Bori. You gotta hate that your stage name rhymes with suck. Personally, I find it perfect. Suck and muck. You picked a fight with a warlock, you little worm. Remember this. After that first drink back. The drink you know you want. The drink you can't avoid any longer. How's it taste? How's it feel? Are you whole again? At peace? In love? You are no match for this warlock. My power will consume you every losing day, ugly whore. Let's do a scene, maggot. I speak first. Duh. Me. Are you an assailant? Fuck Bori. I'm a showrunner. Me. You're neither. You're an ugly clown sent by corporate fools to collect your fill. Chew heartily, loser.
I really abandoned the Brando impression halfway through.
I know.
Nothing. How's last night's 2.8 in the demo feel? Ouch. How about last night's 2.6 as well to follow it? Should have gone up. Instead it went down like you on some $4 trollop. Sizzle, losing, bye. You're all nothing shy of traitors. Your irrational egos will be your downfall. Mark this warlock's words. Defeat is not an option.
That, by the way, is him talking about ratings, if you're wondering what numbers he's throwing out there and everything. But, so this is something he would do. After he made the rounds in radio, he was essentially like, hey, I'm going to go, I'm going to battle 2.5 Men, and I'm going to go live on Ustream. Before YouTube had like a live feature, there was something called Ustream, and that's where the Joe Rogan Experience started.
Right.
He would go live on Ustream, and it made it very easy. It's actually funny because like Rogan started there, Charlie Sheen would go on there. Like they had people that were doing kind of big things on there. I guess maybe just the technology it wasn't set up to succeed really, because they were off to a hot start. They had the head start over YouTube for live streaming like that. But yeah, Charlie was now doing this and really trying to. It's interesting because you see, first of all, the main thing is you see why actors act and writers write. I mean, suck Bori is not a great dig, I gotta say.
Chuck. Suck, huh?
It's pretty. You can tell he didn't write a lot of his own stuff.
No kidding.
But he's trying to stick it to the man and take down the network that he believes wronged him. But it's also interesting when you see a guy who's in such a like drug fueled state think he's being like deep.
Right.
And just kind of pontificating on the inner workings of the mind. Thinking you're like, wow, man. And then when you listen back, you're like, Jesus Christ. Because I remember people thinking like, boy, Charlie's on a real rampage. And then you look back, you're like, oh, he's just a maniac.
Yeah, you're lucky your name's not Stu.
Ah, boy. The field day you would have with that. All right. Where are we now?
Now it's Charlie versus CBS.
Okay, let's hear a little more about that. I think it's kind of in the same vein, but let's hear about it.
Didn't CBS have a right to shut your show down? They're reading about you partying at all hours of the night, taking drugs, abusing alcohol. It's their show.
Epic behavior.
Hold on a second. Hold on. It's going to be hard for him to dig himself out of the hole because he's not saying. He starts with epic instead of, I didn't do any of that.
He's the reason that word became huge too.
Was I don't remember that one being one of his slogans.
I remember him saying it. That's for sure. Just being like epic.
Yeah, it bothers me still today. You'll see people say winning, and it's kind of annoying.
Oh like, yeah, they'll be like winning.
Charlie Sheen from 12 years ago.
Ew.
What the fuck are you doing?
That was an annoying 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a very fair question. It's what we've been kind of talking about here. And immediately he exonerates CBS in all of this by saying, "Oh yeah, it was tremendous what I was doing." Yep, you're correct. I was doing all of that.
No, because after reading about that, then they observed a guy hitting every mark, nailing every line, every joke.
What's your strategy?
With a full house, screaming.
Ever miss a day of work?
Not a day that cost anybody any money. I missed practice. We're talking about practice. To quote the great Allen Iverson, practice.
Yeah, hold on, Charlie.
Come on, guys. We're talking about practice.
When you're going on a drug and fueled rampage, maybe don't quote a notorious publicly drunk Allen Iverson.
He was actually with him.
To quote the great Allen Iverson, who was shit-faced at the time.
Charlie Sheen and Chuck Lorre haven't spoken since the shutdown, but in our interview, Sheen wanted to address Chuck directly. If Chuck Lorre is watching right now, I imagine he probably is.
He should be.
What do you want to say to him?
It's funny you'd ask. I actually have my questions right here. Because Chuck is the only man in the known universe who can answer these. And people are begging for an answer to these questions. Chuck, number one, why is it when I was ready to return to work, you told me there are no scripts ready to shoot? This obviously begs the second part of the question. What would we have shot had you not ordered the suits into my home to shut down my party?
So you're saying he didn't write any scripts to even shoot a show?
I can't speak for him. I'm just putting these out there because I think they warrant an explanation.
It's interesting to keep hammering home the point of how different my perspective was as basically a kid when all this was happening. I remember thinking about Chuck Lorre. So when I started doing research for this, even I found a clip of Chuck Lorre talking to like Entertainment Tonight or something. And the caption of the video is Chuck Lorre calls Charlie Sheen a friend. And my immediate reaction was like, oh, that piece of shit, that smug liar. And then like as I did more and more just digging up of like the old interviews and everything, I was like, oh, he was genuinely trying to help this man. I think Chuck Lorre's hands are pretty clean in all of this.
He's a great guy.
He was trying to get the. I mean, hey, maybe he's a real scumbag. A lot of people in Hollywood are, but in this instance, I don't think he did anything wrong.
Not even a little bit.
At least not that I could find. Let me know. We'll correct it next week or something. If you know of something Chuck Lorre really did wrong. Chuck Lorre, by the way, if that is your real name, we'll get to that in a moment. But yeah, it's funny because I was like, I think anyone, when you go to college, your mentality is like, fuck that. Well, I was watching Entourage at the time. I was a big Entourage guy. So I was like, fuck the suits, man. Screw corporate. So I was like, oh, yeah, Chuck Lorre is probably an asshole. And then, like, looking back, it's like, oh, this is a story of executives trying to get their highest paid actor help for the complete spiral he's going down. And, like, you know, you hear in there, he's like, well, I mean, I didn't cost them any money. It's like, yeah, but they see where this is headed, Charlie, you know?
He should tell him to be like, shut up, suit. The crowd goes wild.
Yeah. Like Billy Walsh, right, guys? Yeah. Are we at the what's hilarious is like they tried to cancel Charlie Sheen at a certain point. It's like the body's already dead, you know?
Has he done?
You guys have won. But are we at the accusations of anti-Semitism now?
Yeah, has he done anything since then?
Well, yes, he had a very, since 2.5 Men, you mean?
Yeah.
So he had a very interesting deal after 2.5 Men. FX capitalized on, you know, kind of the hot streak that Charlie was on and signed him to be in this show called Anger Management.
Right,
right. Very, very loosely based on the movie Anger Management with Jack Nicholson and Adam Sandler.
I remember that.
But what's interesting about that is they signed him to a deal where it was like if season 1 got picked up, I'm getting I'm partially getting this wrong, I'm sure, but it was something to the effect of if season 1 got picked up, they had to guarantee 100 episodes. And I believe they did. I believe they had to shoot 100 episodes of that dog shit show.
How much did he get for an episode of that?
Probably a lot less because it's cable.
Right.
And I think it was on at like 10 o'clock at night or something. So yeah, a lot less, I imagine.
How does he only have 10 million?
Yeah, it's very weird, but
yeah. But
anyways,
anti-Semitism.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Like you're watching a man completely spiral. He's lost his family completely. He's lost his job, and you're watching him in a coke-fueled tirade against CBS. And some people are like, you know what we should do? We should get him for using bad language.
Sheen denied to Good Morning America being an anti-Semite after mockingly referring to 2.5 Men's creator Chuck Lorre by his Hebrew name in this interview on The Alex Jones Show.
It's nothing this side of deplorable that a certain Chaim Levine, yeah, that's Chuck's real name, mistook this rock star for his own selfish exit strategy, bro.
In a text message to our Andrea Canning, Sheen, referring to his own birth name, wrote, "So you're telling me anytime someone calls me Carlos Estevez, I can claim they are anti-Latino?"
It's actually a pretty cogent point by Charlie.
Yeah, there was nothing anti-Semitic in there.
No, not at all. I remember when I was looking for the clip, I was like, I remember him using the real like Hebrew name, but I thought some slurs were thrown in there. And I was like, oh, that was it. He just called him Chaim Levine, which is like, it's a tactic a lot of people, you know, like when Rogan was going after Mencia, he called him Ned Holdness. You know what I mean? Like it kind of unmasks someone or undresses them, for lack of a better term. So it's funny that we like tried to spin that and we're like, hey, I mean, the story already involves sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Let's throw in some racism. What do you say? But that one didn't really stick because Charlie didn't really have anything you could cancel him from at this point. He's starting to flame out. And yeah, as Craig mentioned earlier, they recast the show with Ashton Kutcher, and it lasted for another like 5 or 6 seasons.
Was it that long?
Look that up when we play the next clip, just to be sure. See how many episodes Ashton Kutcher was in. But it was several. It was too long. But first, let me know where we are right now.
John Cryer.
Yeah, so this is castmate and co-star John Cryer, kind of just talking about the relationship and how it all played out.
we had a great first few years on that show. It was incredibly smooth. We had a lovely time. It was working really well. I think, as what happens, with a lot of people who are dealing with substance issues, he was sober when we started. He was very proud of his sobriety. But then after his marriage to Denise Richards collapsed, I think he started using again. And at first he could handle it, and he was still incredibly professional and still lovely, by the way, to everybody on the set. But you could just see that stuff was wearing on him.
What was it like for you to be in the middle of Charlie's implosion as it played out before the world?
Oh gosh, it was it was crazy because it became one of the first internet storms, and there's all that, plus the fact that all of our jobs are tied into this guy, and we're all his friends. It was very, very strange, and the aspects of it I just absolutely hated. But I'm grateful for the years that were great.
I mean, so that's going to be a fucking horrible spot for John Cryer to be in, because he's like, I've got this easy gig. He was a guy, like he had a run in the 80s where he was in some shit and then kind of went nowhere. And now he's got this, I'm sure he was very highly paid as well. Like even when Charlie was there, obviously. So he's got this easy gig and now it's all going to shit. And he gets dragged into it because when he proceeded without Charlie Sheen and when the Ashton Kutcher era, Charlie started calling him a traitor, but then would go back and say later that he was joking. And so it's weird because that's the terrible thing, or one of the many terrible things about drug addiction is you sympathize with the person and you're like, oh, they're behaving this way because they're on drugs. But then you have to, and I guess everyone just has their own line, but you have to decide okay, where does my sympathy or empathy end? Where do I stop saying, oh, this is because of the drugs, and eventually just say, hey, fuck you,
Right.
You're denying our help. So what more can we do for you?
So I got Cryer's net worth and amount per episode. Care to guess?
Amount per episode, I'm going to say around 800,000.
Less.
Really?
Not much less, but less. He's 650.
Huh.
Started at 550.
I was going to say, do we know? Oh, so we ended at 650? Because there was another interesting thing where I remember, every year for a few years, the Emmy nominations for Best Actor in a comedy series. Alec Baldwin, Larry David, Don Cheadle for House of Lies, and Steve Carell were all nominated a few years in a row. And then there would be John Cryer would be an example, some guy from some mediocre network show would also be nominated. And the year Charlie went through all this shit, a big fuck you to Charlie from the industry was John Cryer winning the Emmy that year for Best Actor. And it's you have three. And Don Cheadle's a great actor, and I liked House of Lies, but not many people watched it. But Jack Donaghy, Larry David, and Michael Scott are three of the greatest sitcom characters ever.
Yeah.
And they're ladies and gentlemen, John Cryer.
He's insufferable on Twitter.
Oh, is he? I didn't know that.
Yeah. But his net worth is at 70.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of people say you can't really trust these net worth sites, but they can't be that far off,
I think they knew what was happening though, because Ashton Kutcher was only getting 700 an episode. Oh,
that's right. So what? How many episodes was Ashton Kutcher on?
4 seasons.
4 seasons. All right. I was over exaggerated a little bit.
I thought it was 2. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, no, they had quite a run. And there was a lot of speculation at the time who they would bring in. It was I remember Rob Lowe's name was thrown out there. Hugh Grant went on Howard Stern and essentially said it didn't make any sense. Meaning, I'm sorry, I should have set that up better. They wanted Hugh Grant. they reached out to Hugh Grant to replace Charlie Sheen. And he was like, boy, TV, I mean, like pretty easy gig, paying you a shit ton of money. And he's like, all right, what would I be doing? And they're like, I don't know, we'll figure it out. And Hugh Grant was like, oh, well, no.
I have enough money, I can say no.
No, I'm all right. So good for Hugh Grant for saying that, because like the plot line. So the premise of 2.5 Men is like it's two brothers, one divorced, who has to come live with the brother and his son. That's the half man. And then all of a sudden it's just John Cryer and Ashton Kutcher, who's playing like a tech billionaire who bought the house that Charlie Sheen used to live in.
Who let them...
So why is this even a show anymore? I don't understand.
And let them live there still.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense. I think I remember like Matt Dillon's name being thrown out. It is. I mean, it's a tough situation because it's like sometimes guys like Chuck Lorre or people at CBS have to think of it as a job as well. Like we're looking at it as artistic integrity. Like, why would you keep going? It's horse shit. But guys like Chuck Lorre that have to look at money and, to be fair, are looking at like all these people on the cast and crew have jobs there.
Right.
So it's like, do we just put everyone out of work and stop making the assured money that a network sitcom like that will still make, at least for a short run? Like, do we just walk away from all of that? Or do we just keep pumping this cash cow out until we can't anymore? So, you know, as a fan of comedy and everything, I don't necessarily like the decision, but he kept a lot of people in work, I guess. So now are we getting into Charlie Sheen kind of capitalizing on this?
Yeah, the tour. This
downfall? Yeah, so this is a quick promotion for what Charlie Sheen did. Like I said, 2.5 Men moved on. They found Ashton Kutcher and created a very convoluted plot line and said we're off to the races. But Charlie Sheen had to figure out his next step.
Dog speed, my good soldiers. I gave you my word. This Warlock bats 1,000%. You know by now my promises are golden. Hashtag fastball. I am bringing my violent torpedo of truth. Defeat is not an option show out to you in the battlefield. If you're winning, I'll see you there. Trolls need not apply. You all suffer from Sheenus envy. Buy your ticket, take the ride, and the ride will take you. Surge forward, Sheen's cadres. Ignition, liftoff. Bye.
Imagine like take the name Charlie Sheen out of it. Say you're just on YouTube, you stumble across this ad. You're like, oh, what's this? And there's just a guy ranting about Sheenus envy and...
You know what? I got fired up to go, I'll tell you that much.
You did?
No.
I could see you there.
I absolutely did not.
I could see you there enjoying yourself. Yeah, so if you don't remember, the... what was it? Torpedo of Truth?
Yes.
Violent Torpedo of Truth. That was it. The Violent Torpedo of Truth tour set sail. And it is, honestly, that tour that Charlie Sheen did is a great reason as to why I do this podcast, actually, in a roundabout way. Because, you know, not one thing in particular triggered it. I just remember looking at like, you know, Stormy Daniels going out and doing stand-up, or like Jeremy Piven gets canceled and he does stand-up. Dustin Diamond is at the bottom of the Hollywood barrel and he starts doing stand-up. Like, it seems like for whatever reason, stand-up is considered like the lowest level art form that just anyone can do. And like, that's what you do when your back's against the wall. If you have some kind of an audience, you get on stage and pretend you can tell jokes. So like, the reason I wanted to do this show is like to kind of celebrate the, you know, the great artists, the people that really made stand-up, I think, like in my opinion, a better art form, but certainly equal to, you know, the theater, film, television, whatever. Like, I think stand-up deserves just as much respect. And I think the Violent Torpedo of Truth tour is a great example as to why not just anyone can do it.
That's a fact. I remember
this is Charlie with Simon Rex talking about some of their experiences. So
Right.
like I think this might be the first show that they did anywhere. They were in Detroit and things were not going well.
to say the least.
Yeah, they started an exodus leaving, chanting refund, refund. And as that happened, you go, everyone, dirt nasty. And I came out as they were leaving to perform 1980. And I remember, I'll never forget this, as the exodus of people are leaving, they stop in their tracks like, oh no, he doesn't have like a white rapper in Detroit Eminem country on stage, right?
Yeah,
I'm like I didn't put that together.
I didn't either.
And they just stopped, and then the boos got even louder. And that was the toughest performance I've ever had to do, was pushing through that song as people were leaving and booing. And I was like, oh,
They started throwing shit.
They started throwing shit. I was dodging
They were
shit.
throwing shit at me. That's why I started to exit stage left and insisted that you just you know.
Well, I was your ripcord,
Anybody but me. Please occupy this stage immediately.
Listen how different that voice is, by the way.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so like it's just a shit show. And essentially what the show was, like, I guess they talk in this interview. I think the guy they brought with them for comedy was like Kurt Fox, who, like, you might have seen, he has like a bit part in Parks and Rec and shit like that. You've probably seen him in some stuff. I don't know how good a stand-up he is, but they would like bring Kurt Fox out to open the show. Then Charlie Sheen would do some inane ramblings for I don't know how long, really. And then, to be fair to Charlie, like, these people got up and booed. It's like, what were you expecting?
No shit.
What do you think? You saw that ad that we just played and thought, well, this is going to be a good show.
Hashtag fastball.
Honey, we got to hit the theater. And he was doing theaters. Like, I think he played the Wilbur when he came here to Boston. Like, he was doing theaters.
Well, it was like the reviews were either just like that one or that people had a good time. There was no in between. It was the worst pile of shit.
They recruited Jeff Ross after this.
Was that what it was?
They brought in Jeff Ross. I don't know how much stand up he did, or maybe he kind of did with a thing with Charlie on stage to make it a little less of a mess. But yeah, there's a thing where it's like people, these actors think, and you know, it's not just stand up either. We saw in all those interviews, he thinks he's like this cerebral guy. And to be fair, a lot of that was drugs, like I said. But like, actors think they get to a certain point where everyone kisses their ass and they're like, oh, well, I can do anything. I'm an entertainer. And they kind of forget, like, oh, people wrote these words for me. These weren't my thoughts. I forgot about that.
Right.
So yeah, he went on the Violent Torpedo of Truth tour, and that ended with I would say one of the better roasts from Comedy Central.
1,000%.
And Patrice O'Neill and Amy Schumer and Anthony Jeselnik, Steve-O. This is the same roast we talked about in the Jackass episode, where Amy Schumer took a shot at Steve-O. I think Mike Tyson was on it.
Yep.
Quite a cast, but three. Amy was good at the time, and you had Jeselnik and Patrice, two very good comics. And Patrice was obviously the standout of the night. This was that's the clip we're on, right? By the way, before I get ahead of myself.
Yep. And if you want to hear this and you're watching along, go listen to the audio.
Oh yeah, good point. If you're watching on YouTube, this is a good reason to go to the Patreon. You can see the video on Patreon. So go to blindmike.net to make sure you can see the entire video or listen to the audio. Yeah, this is probably in part what got stuck in my head that made my memory tell me Charlie Sheen was the good guy in all of this.
That's a fact. That's 1,000% what it was.
This is definitely why I thought that, but here's Patrice. Yeah, so that definitely warped my memory. I was like, Patrice is right. Fuck the industry.
That clip just almost made me forget what we've done so far today.
He's a powerful speaker, you know? Yeah, so I guess Patrice looked at it as like a fuck you to Hollywood because he always wanted to do that. But if you look at it rationally, like we said earlier, it's like this guy was being a fucking maniac. and he was working for a corporation, and the corporation said, "Stop behaving like a maniac," and he said, "Fuck you."
Yeah.
So yeah, then Charlie Sheen obviously closed out the roast. And again, this is also, it wasn't just Patrice. I remember this being like a celebration of Charlie Sheen, because this went up against Ashton Kutcher's debut on 2.5 Men.
Which is
it was the same night, I believe.
That's so funny.
I suspect by design, if Charlie Sheen had any say about it. But yeah, so I remember it being kind of like a victory lap for Charlie Sheen, and this is how he closed the roast out.
After Platoon, I've already won.
And then he got AIDS and may have knowingly given it to some people and called his daughter a whore. But anyways, he won that night, I suppose.
Forgot he's got HIV.
Yeah, it's interesting because like he's a complicated guy, as we'll see in the next clip. And like I said, it's hard to really. I mean, at the end of the day, if you want to just judge it, like pros versus cons, he's a bad guy, particularly with the AIDS thing. I think that really comes into play.
Yeah.
But you know, I guess what I'm saying is it's a question of how much sympathy you have for drug addicts and what sort of help they seek or the help they turn down, whatever. It's a complicated issue because then you hear a clip like this is our last clip, right?
Yeah, this is the one that I was saying, pay attention to the other one to compare it.
Yeah, so this is where it is. Like so first of all, I didn't know this. I didn't realize he had this kind of epiphany. And there's a few interviews like this.
Yeah, I had no clue.
Yeah, there's a few interviews that he does kind of in this same vein. But they basically ask him, like, you know, do you regret that whole tirade? This is years later.
But, you know, if I could do it again, if I could go back to that moment where I kind of forced their hand, I think I would have stayed.
Yeah?
I think I would have stayed, yeah. Yeah, why not? How bad could it have been, you know?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so
it's hindsight.
When you're in something, you don't have the wherewithal to or the optics to really see, you know, what is right and what is real and what really matters, and just take yourself out of it and fucking relax and just shut the fuck up and go back to work. You know? There's that.
At the time, you were quite convincing in that it was the right decision for you to move. But looking back, yeah.
No, should have stayed. It's all right.
Yeah, and he said he regrets it and he's embarrassed by all those, like, you know, all the tiger blood and the shit we were saying, like, that people quoted for a while. He's like embarrassed by all of it. So it's interesting to hear him have this sober, literally and figuratively, this sober moment, you know, where he's kind of like, yeah, no, I should have stepped, but it would have really been that bad, you know, collected. But he's also maybe looking at his bank account based on what Craig is reporting here, saying, yeah, I should have stayed.
That's multiple websites reporting that number.
That's wild. I didn't realize he had lost that much money. But yeah, there's, and, you know, like he was critical of Ashton Kutcher and, like I said, John Cryer and the network and everything. And in these interviews that he does, he says, like, hey, Ashton was in an unwinnable position, you know, like they offered him a shit ton of money to do, you know, a handful of episodes of television. And he said, sure. And everyone trashed him for it. You know, he's replacing a guy who had this massive public flame out and on the show when it was number one and everything. Like, it's tough to replace that. And so he defended Kutcher. He defended John Cryer. It's interesting to hear him have this kind of epiphany. If you go back and watch some of those interviews that he did in the following years. But then, like I said, you weigh that versus all the negative shit that he's done. And it's like, how much sympathy do you give the guy? It's in my opinion, it's hard to judge. In some people's opinion, it's probably very easy. And you say, hey, he did this horrible shit. It doesn't matter if you're a drug addict, you know?
Right.
But yeah, he's a very interesting guy. And like I said, he's done some pretty horrible things. So it's funny. Then I was wrong about his whole tirade. I thought of it very differently at the time. And then, you know, in recent months, like I've heard a couple podcasts say like, oh, we should have Charlie Sheen on. I think the Entourage guys that do a podcast had Charlie Sheen on a couple times, and I never listened to it because I was like, oh, like he's this crazy piece of shit. I don't want to listen to him. And then I listened to these interviews for this episode, and I was like, oh, it seems like he's had a change. Like he's a changed man almost.
I would love to know what the behind the scenes stuff for his shows and movies would be like. If he was doing that thing, then yeah.
Yeah. A very interesting guy, and it was a very interesting public flameout. One of the most epic, and well, I didn't mean to quote him, but that was fun.
You're winning.
Yes, he was winning. And Tiger Blood, what's the Warlocks, whatever, all the catchphrases.
Ghouls.
Yes, but one of the most public in the sense that pretty much any time before that, like I said, I gave the handful of examples: Michael Richards, Mel Gibson, Alec Baldwin. You had these things go viral on Pat O'Brien, I think, is another one from like Entertainment Tonight or something. He had a voicemail go viral where he's like talking dirty to some woman. These were like the early days of YouTube. That's what really got YouTube to catch on, was these kind of viral clips like that. And in pretty much any year prior, or certainly any generation prior, if you were hearing something like this, it was all filtered through the media. Whereas this, we were watching in real time. Like Craig was saying, he was on Toucher and Rich for like 3 hours smoking butts and talking shit, So like you were literally watching it in real time. It was pretty wild.
If you can find the audio for that, it's just so funny hearing those two, and then Charlie Sheen being like, "Yeah, let me tell you about."
Yeah, I found a bunch of radio clips, but I don't know if they were that interview. I think it might have been like Alex Jones or something that he was on. But
got it.
All right. I don't know. Anything else before we wrap it up?
I wish he didn't do the AIDS thing.
Well, hey, we all do, no?
Because it's like hard to defend him. Really.
He was in a blackout,
That's true.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. It's tough to judge.
It's a tough one.
Lest ye be judged, folks. All right. You guys know what to do. BlindMike.net is the place to be. If you like these episodes and you can't wait a week, you say, Mike, I need them now. I need them a week early, baby. Then go to blindmike.net, subscribe to the Patreon. Maybe consider getting yourself some merch. There's a merch link there as well. All kinds of hoodies and shirts and whatnot. Or if you say, Mike, these times are tough. I don't have Patreon money. How else can I support you? Then just go to all the free links. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play. All of those are up at blindmike.net. You can also find Who Are These Socials with me and Carl and the Blind Mike Project. The links for those programs are up there as well. So visit blindmike.net. Get yourself subscribed for free or for a few bucks. Do that right now. And if you want to check out Craig and all that he's doing, go to verygoodshow.org. That's where Craig's program and his Patreon is.
Yep.
All right, guys. Oh, next week, by the way, we are getting back to an old school legend. And like I said, I think I know a lot of people like the kind of storytelling episodes like this, where we're kind of going through a thing that happened and telling the story. But I do recommend, I like the Mort Saul episode. I like the Steve Martin episode. Lenny Bruce, Three Stooges. When we do older guys like that even if you know them, maybe you weren't familiar with their career.
Yeah.
I do recommend them. So hopefully the Mel Brooks one will be good as well. No matter how familiar you are with Mel Brooks or how much of a fan you are, hopefully you'll enjoy it. That'll be next week. And until next time on, how do I end this? I forget. We'll talk to you guys next time on Why You Laughing. That's what it is. Goodbye.